Presiding Officer, this Parliament has huge potential to transform the lives of people in Scotland. In relation to the challenges of climate change, the solutions increasingly lie in areas such as energy demand reduction in housing and transport, active travel, urban planning, and a substantial programme of reforestation and ecological restoration. Transport is the sector that's seen least progress in terms of reducing carbon emissions. And as Stop Climate Chaos point out in their briefing today, the focus on the use of the private car privileges men and higher earners disproportionately. The new Cabinet Secretary will be faced with formidable vested interests in addressing some of the questions she will be put. And she will need all her experience and political skills to persuade her Cabinet colleagues that they must work together to achieve such ambitions. She also has some critical decisions to take in the short term on topics such as wildlife crime and the future of beavers. Which brings me to land reform. I first met Rosanna Cunningham in the 1990s when she was an MP, and we were both part of a group campaigning against the abandonment of tenant farms by the owner of Blackford Estate, owned then as now by a company registered in the secrecy jurisdiction of Liechtenstein. Deputy Presiding Officer, land reform is about the redistribution of legal, political and economic power over land, and is a process at the heart of questions over the affordability of housing, the availability of land for housing, wealth inequality, food security, economic development, equitable taxation, and how to govern public land, including Crown land. And that's why in the Scottish Greens manifesto, we outlined 18 distinct measures that could be taken to democratise land and ensure that it's owned and used in the public interest and for the common good. And that is why I believe that there must be a further Land Reform Act in this Parliament. And I look forward to discussions with others on how such an act might be framed. Finally, as this is my first speech, I just want to highlight two related issues that I personally believe are vital to address over the next 5 years. The first of these is inequality. In the decade 1997 to 2007, the share of total income among Scottish taxpayers that has gone to the top 1% of earners has increased by more than all of the rest of the 99% combined. Scottish Greens did not propose a 60% top rate of tax because it would yield vast amounts of tax revenue. We proposed it because it would help to reduce income inequality by curbing excessive pay demands and by diverting funds to employ more people on more modest salaries. Inequality is also a product of the way in which land and property is taxed. A week ago today, the First Minister talked about the clear progressive majority in this Parliament and how it could be harnessed to oppose what she described as regressive Westminster policies. What more regressive policy, however, is there than the council tax? Designed in Westminster by a Tory government, it remains the most regressive of all taxes in the UK, and it sees those in the lowest value properties pay far more, both in relation to the value of their property and as a percentage of their income, than those who live in the most expensive properties. And that regressivity remains even after the tinkering proposed by both the SNP and the Tories. We will continue to make the case for the abolition of council tax and its replacement with a modern progressive system that provides a predictable source of finance for local government, stabilises and reduces house prices, and helps growing numbers of young people afford a home while reducing their exposure to volatile interest payments. The second issue I want to highlight, and will be highlighting continually over the course of this Parliament, is democracy itself. Last Thursday, Fiona Hislop claimed that Scotland has, and I quote, one of the most politically engaged electorates in Europe. But 45% of this electorate chose not to vote on the 5th of May. Why did so many people see no point in expressing any preference as to who should represent them for the next 5 years? And if this engaged electorate cares little about Holyrood, it cares even less about local democracy, which is in a far more fragile state with turnouts that should shame us all. Deputy Presiding Officer, if people do not vote, political parties will increasingly present manifestos that favour those who do vote, the rich, the propertied and the elderly. Those who need most effective representation, the young, the poor and the vulnerable, will find themselves increasingly marginalised. The solutions to climate change, to inequality, to voter apathy can only be addressed by a radical redistribution of economic and political power for the benefit of all and for the planet as a whole. Deputy Presiding Officer, I look forward very, very much to the next 5 years and to the bold and transformative measures that we in the Scottish Greens believe are both possible and vital. And our amendment outlines that boldness, that clarity and that determination, and I move the amendment in my name.